All right, Jose, we're back, and we're doing a special one of our reaction shows because, like I always say, like you always say, we love sports documentaries, and ESPN has kicked off a big one,
Yeah.
a real big one. So we just watched The Captain episode one about Derek. It's all about Derek Jeter. It's a 7-part series. So we're gonna go episode by episode on our YouTube channel for you guys. So Jose, initial thoughts, kick it off, man.
Yeah, what's going on, Deremy? I love the first episode. I'll be honest, man. I loved it, and I'm not a big Yankees fan. I think I can speak for you in saying you're not a big Yankees fan, but and I know we have our thoughts because we've had conversations even on this show about Derek Jeter. But I really liked this first episode. So it's if you haven't seen it yet, it's very similar. It's going to be very similar to like The Last Dance and stuff like that. But I think Spike Lee's one of the directors of this docu series. So I was just excited because again, it was a 7-part baseball documentary, and right now, like I'm all in with baseball. You know what I mean? Like we just did our show. Talking about Pedro Martinez 1999 season. Check the archives,
Check them.
and and we're gonna we're going to do reaction shows to each episode of this Derek Jeter like documentary. So, no, I really enjoyed it. It was some interesting stories there, especially like early on in his career. So, how about you, Jeremy? How did you feel about it?
I really liked it. I did like it. The thing that gets me, and we're gonna, we're just looking at episode by episode. So episode
Right.
one, start off, it's good.
Yeah.
It sets it up nice. Now, I kind of have a little fear factor from the Last Dance. So
So do I. So do I. So do
from the
I.
Last Dance, and also Tom Brady's docu series, the arena. They
I haven't watched that yet.
Well, I did, and it kind of had the same feel as the last. It starts off really good. Those episode ones are really good, and then it kind of it gets just like you'll get some candidness about like a loss or something or the grind, but it's not. You could tell just how much they're controlling the narrative, and they're the star piece, and they're controlling that narrative. And what makes me concerned is the Last Dance was the opposite. It was masked as about the 98 Bulls, but it was a Michael Jordan piece. But with that, you could throughout lean on there was, a Rodman themed one, a Phil Jackson one. With the Tom Brady thing and with Derek Jeter, they're not about really the dynasties. It's about the
Yeah.
individual. So to me, I'm just like, are we going to get that director pressing Jeter? Jeter's going to talk about real things, someone who never has before. Because to me, the star of the first episode were his parents and his sister. They really shine talking about his biracial journey.
Yeah. That's where I was all in there, when they were talking about that and something that we never really heard about. And like you mentioned, I'm glad you did. Like that Jeter wasn't, he wasn't that real outspoken person. He was a great leader. He was good with the media and all that. And being in New York for as long as he was, that obviously was a learned skill. But listening to those stories early on with him in Michigan and having to deal with some of that stuff and he's telling that story. He was getting something to eat or something, and the car pulled up next to him and was saying like, give you go take your take the car back to your parents, and they called him the N word. Like that was. I mean, I don't want to say it's surprising, but we are we're talking mid 90s here. Well, no, that was like early 90s, but still, like you look at Derek Jeter and I don't know anything. I forget the name of the city, but
Kalamazoo.
Kalamazoo, yeah, and I don't know anything about Kalamazoo and anything like that, but listening to those stories, man, like I do understand what it's like to like walk in places and people staring at you all crazy, and you walk in and they know you're from like out of town or whatever the case may be, but his family, his parents are biracial, right? Like, and having to deal with that, and there's a mixed family, and it was just really interesting to hear those stories.
No, I will say this. I really liked this episode, and I liked the start of really getting right into that. Of starting, Derek kicks it off right with a family, and then they pretty much right away address what to me was the biggest elephant in the room, in my opinion, throughout Derek's entire Yankee run, which from someone who saw this from start to finish and can be like, well, I remember when Jeter first came up and seeing all this,
Yep.
it was always that thing of you would see his parents, you see his mom's white, dad's black, his sister would be there, and he was this heartthrob. I remember I went to Yankee Stadium, multiple, throughout '96 to 2000. I would go once a year to games, and the ladies. I mean, talk about like that first example of seeing like a heartthrob, like a sex symbol. Everyone, all the ladies with the number twos loved Jeter,
Yeah.
and to me, it's always like, do they know he's biracial? Like, no one's talking about this. Like, no one's. And it's just a different time because in today's era he couldn't do what he did. He couldn't just not address these things, and
Yeah.
I think the media wouldn't let him not address it, but then he couldn't duck it. He would be asked, what do you think about these issues that are going on in society now? And it's just at times that you think it's not that long ago, but it is in so many ways, where it wouldn't be this. He's just talking about it in retrospect. If he was an athlete today, as big as he is, if the Yankees are winning titles, he has to talk about this in some capacity.
Yeah. Yeah. He would. There was no way he was escaping that. There was no way. He could have, and he probably could have. I don't want to say there's no way, but like, he just joined like Twitter and social media and all that stuff, right before this documentary kicked off, which I get, like, he wanted to do that to kind of promote the show, but you know, there's no way he was going to be able to avoid that. Like, there is no, in New York as well, like, absolutely not. Like, they would have been all over him, pressing him on that, especially knowing that he was biracial. It's very similar to like Tiger Woods. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? To me, like, these two guys are very similar to me when I look at them. It's like, there's, you see that, like you said, you see their parents on the sidelines, and everybody's going to have questions about that. And I think in today's game they would have been like pressing them hard on that.
Yeah, and honestly, that's a great comparison with Tiger because they both kind of emerge. Jeter '96, Tiger really in '97 when he wins that Masters. So it was around the same time, and I felt like Tiger really dodged it a lot. But Tiger got asked a few times. I remember him going on Oprah, and
Yeah.
Oprah didn't press him hard, but he did get asked a question where I never remember Derek Jeter, local or national, ever get. I mean, maybe you could dig something up and dig a clip up or a little part of an article, and he mentions it, but I don't ever remember Jose like him bringing it up. Like last night's episode 1 was the first time I ever remember hearing,
Right.
reading anything him talk about his biracial, like how he grew up being biracial
Yeah, I also think Tiger had it rough, a little rougher because of the sport he was playing in.
for
You know what I mean?
sure.
Like, they 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 definitely didn't want Tiger breaking down those doors. But
And I think
yeah,
Tiger was a
I
little
don't.
bit bigger.
Yeah, yes. I agree. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I don't remember ever. That's why I think I was hooked. I was hooked right away because, again, it was something different immediately. You know what I mean? Like, it was a different side of Derek Jeter that I never saw before. And again, I'm not to say I'm super close to what the Yankees are doing, but it's Derek Jeter. We all know what Derek Jeter's doing, and so I appreciated that. I appreciated them, like you mentioned, jumping right into it, and they were speaking candid, especially his parents were. His mom seems like super down to earth, like super cool, and I liked it right off the jump.
Well, and to me, from the filmmaking side of it, as a guy who loves movies and documentaries, that's what makes me nervous. Like they were good for episode 1. In my opinion, he didn't really. He touched on it like just a little bit. Just it was like they were. go to him and saying, no, they raised me saying you're a black man. But the real heart and the real struggles with it, it was his parents and sister talking about it.
Right.
And other people like talk. It was not Derek Jeter. And that makes me nervous for the future where is he going to open up and share that emote and get something raw, or is it just going to be you have to depend on his teammates talking?
Yeah.
And that's what it makes me like. He didn't say a lot. Still, he did address it, but it's very just boom. They raised me. You're a black man. To my sister, you're a black woman, and this is how the world is. And it's like,
It was very surface level.
yeah,
Very surface
his
level.
parents gave it. His sister gave the heart. The talking heads in the media talking about what the Midwest and racism was like. That gave the context and the bringing it together. He really didn't do that.
Yeah, which and for context, for those who don't know, like I think the Last Dance scarred Deremy for a little while there, because those first four episodes were really really good, and then it just kind of
They didn't scar.
it
It's just
it
it's
turned into the Michael Jordan show.
it
Yeah,
it's false advertising, and also they set the bar to ESPN's credit. 30 for 30, we've talked about it on our podcast many times. Those documentaries were great. And then you have, I'm not saying that I expect this to be OJ Made in America, like any of these, but you have that, which it was just, won an Oscar. So then the bar's high, but they set the bar high. And, for The Last Dance, and maybe for this too, don't give false advertising is what I say. If you would call it a Michael Jordan documentary, totally different. My opinion is totally different. You gave it a 98 Bulls documentary thing. Mm-mm. So with this, you got to hype it up. Like, is Jeter going to reveal, or is it just a period piece? Because we know his career.
right,
It's well documented.
right, and he's a very like close to the vest type of person, and at least Jordan talked some shit, like what I mean, during his career, and he had no problem. Even like everybody talks about like his Hall of Fame speech. He was talking shit to all these players. Like Jordan has that. Derek Jeter to me does not have that, and I feel like for them to really get information from him like that, they're going to really have to press him, and they're not going to do that. You know what I mean? Like so, it's because I felt like he was talking candid about his like early struggles. You know what I mean? Like when they, in the minor leagues and stuff like that. Like I felt like that was candid, but that first issue about being a mixed family, I that he was very surface level.
But that's easier to do. That's easier to
Absolutely,
talk about.
yeah,
Like, and especially when you know how it ends. He knows he's in the Hall of Fame. He has
right,
five
right,
championships. So like 3,000 hits and all that. So like it's in the moment, yeah, I would give him credit. He was struggling, and then he's in the camera. That's harder, but you know it, it's easy to do that in my opinion. Like it's not if he would tell a story where he felt like I'm giving a hypothetical, like Buck Showalter wanted to hold him down, like or Buck
yeah,
Showalter wasn't really coach. Like then I'm like, oh okay, like he's let it rip about what happened, or but he was just like he was nervous and stuff. And it's like yeah, like everyone else, you know.
yeah, yeah. People were like, he told the story about Andy Pettit, which was weird. Like I'm not gonna tell a guy, yo, you look like my uncle, like,
Right.
and Andy Pettit kind of like big lead them, you know what I mean? Like, and just blew them off and stuff. And like, what do you think, dude? Like, these guys know you're like the top, you're the first round pick. Like, they're gonna make you you're gonna have to earn their respect, man. And it was just, again, it was just cool to seeing those old Yankees on there, talk about that. Like, they had, Bernie Williams, again, Pettit, Posada, like, Gerald Williams was on there, which was, not to say he was a great player, but it was just cool to see him on there. I
Hmm.
haven't seen him in a long time, and it was just I like that. It was cool to see that part.
Well, that part is also what was fitting, and I'm someone who not a Yankees guy, but hey, if we're sports historians, and so knowing the story, but the past couple of years diving deeper into how the '90s Yankees dynasty was built, and
Yeah.
the rough times that they had. You can go into the mid to late '80s, the struggles, and then definitely what happened in the early '90s and the free for all, but how that led to the dynasty is fascinating, and that was really great to see in
Yeah.
episode one them talking about that.
Yeah, I because again, I it's easy to forget those times. You know what I mean? Like it's easy to forget how terrible they were. Even they were showing a highlight, and the Yankee Stadium was empty. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? Like it was fun. It was like weird to see that, and I was like, wait, is this like a regular season game? Like, yeah, it is. Like and that the building was empty. And that just goes to show you how bad that product was at that time. They had Don Mattingly, and that was it. And it was cool. Like they dove into Don Mattingly a little bit as well, And I'm not saying I'm like the biggest Don Mattingly fan, but he was on there talking a little bit too, and that was kind of cool to see. But you're right. Like I almost forgot that from 90 to 92. You know, I'm thinking I get those years right. It was George Steinbrenner was literally had to like
Three
was
years, yeah, he was gone.
yeah, he was gone. For dealing with the dude that for the Dave Winfield thing, which might be a future episode. I don't know, but
Yo, they
um,
it is because it's cool. I'll say real quick side note. I did not know that Jeter's
right.
favorite player was Dave Winfield. I didn't know that he met Dave Winfield after a game in Detroit because yours truly got to meet Dave Winfield at the spot where you were just at, Universal Studios.
There
Got
you go.
and before he it was before he got into the Hall of Fame, and I
There
got to
you,
say this to him live. I was like, I think you're going to get in. You're going to get in soon. He's like, thanks. I was a kid, and he actually got in that year. He got in, so I was like, that's pretty cool.
he's in because of you.
That's
You're
right.
the Derek Jeter. You're the Derek Jeter of
I
podcasting.
saw it. I saw the future. I said, me and Jeter, we both. You touched us, Dave. It's
Yeah.
awesome. But no, it's
Great player though.
Dave
Great player.
Winfield was a great player and underrated how great of an athlete he was. I'm glad Jeter mentioned that last night in the episode.
Yeah, that was cool. Like I didn't know that either, and it was just a name that I just haven't heard in a while. I know we talk about him every once in a while. We did an episode on the '93 Blue Jay or '93 World Series, and we talked about Dave Winfield being on that team, and it was or being on that Toronto team, and it was just cool to hear that, and it was just like pretty cool, like to see. And it was funny that Dave Winfield remembered the conversation. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's what got me from that little
Yeah.
story. I was like, how the hell does he remember that? Like, but yeah, it was just I enjoyed that part of it too, like watching, remembering, like, oh yeah, like that happened, and if it wasn't for that suspension or whatever we want to call it, like they wouldn't be a Yankees dynasty,
Not at all.
in the mid late '90s, and because George Steinbrenner he's going to trade half of those guys
Well,
at least.
let's look at it now. I hate to do it, but the Last Dance with the episode one, the villain was Jerry Krause.
Yep.
Is this setting up? George is kind of a villainous, not up and down rock. Cause they had an up and down rapport at times. George and Derek Jeter.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, is it this is setting that up?
Maybe, maybe. Who knows? We'll see, man. I'm curious, and I know we'll get into what we think about what's going to happen in the next episode, but later on. But yeah, like they have to have that villain, and it's starting to line up that Big George might be that person, and it's an easy one to kind of go after compared to like Jerry Krause, where it's like, what are y'all doing? Like y'all killing this dude, like you know what I mean, like. And to the point where everybody now thinks he was just like this piece. Rest in peace, Jerry Krause. But he was like this piece of shit, like GM, and that he just got lucky and selected Jordan. Like you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like no, like it's. And again, I know I'm going. I don't want to set you up on the Jerry Krause conversation, but
Yeah.
it's like, it's like, no, this dude was a great GM and he had a great eye for talent, and we all know what George Steinbrenner was all about. Like, so I think that's an easier villain to set up.
And well, to me, I just think, and Michael K is the biggest Yankee apologist all the time. Where I don't I think George rode the wave. I'll give George this. I think he learned
Yeah.
being out for 3 years to you can't fire your manager every year and just trade everybody all the time. So I think he learned to be. I'll give him that. But I think George Steinbrenner did not bring anything. That dynasty was all Gene Michael. So for Michael K to go on there and say it was Gene Michael, but George coming back helped because he gave an urgency. I
Right,
don't.
the urgency. Come on,
I'm like
dude. Like,
no, no.
yeah, that's no. He had this team set up for success. You know what I mean? Buck Showalter had this team set up for success. Another name that you may hear every once in a while, but deserves a whole lot more credit for what happened and what this Yankees dynasty turned into. But at this point, when George comes back, you got Jeter, you got Posada, Bernie Williams, Mariano Rivera, you got Andy Pettit already just waiting to come in,
You
and
signed Paul O'Neill.
Paul O'Neill, right? You just traded for David Cohn. Ruben Sierra is a name that I haven't heard in a long time, and one of the most cocky home run hitting dudes of all time. And you know, yeah, so it's like it was all set up for Joe Steinbrenner when he came back, and the only thing he had to do was just not mess it up.
Absolutely.
So that's what he did.
And I thought it was great to see. I know Mattingly. You talked about like how you're not sure how you feel about Mattingly. I will give him credit that he was the lone, especially once the Winfield stuff happened and Dave was gone. Because for a while you had both of them and Ricky
Yeah.
Henderson in the '80s.
Yep.
Dion was there in the '80s too. You know,
Yeah. For the Jerry curl.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you had some guys there, but then eventually it is like Mattingly was the lone bright spot for some really dark times in Yankee history.
So that's where I'm at with him though. It's like, was he that good, or was he just because he was the only player there? It kind of like elevated him a little bit. I know he was a good player. I know he was a great player at one point, but I know people talk about him like, you know what I mean, like one of the best first basemen of all time, and I don't see that.
I hate to give that corny answer. It's both. I think he was great. He had a stretch in the '80s where
Yeah.
he was great, playing great baseball. He did get banged up, and those injuries caught up with him. Though you have to look at it, he's and I'll call it straight up, he's a white superstar in with the Yankees, with the biggest franchise. It sets up also that he gets overhyped as well.
Yeah.
So I think it goes both. Like I don't take away that he didn't have a stretch of great baseball, being a great hitter, but I'll say this: I'm not sad that he's not in the Hall. I'm not like it's a crime that he's not in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
If he got in, like I wouldn't be like that's an outrage either. But I'm not like how is Don Mattingly not in the Hall of Fame? I don't feel that way either.
And I'll give him credit on this though. Like for him to kind of just walk away, in 90, was it 95,
Mm-hmm.
and knowing that this team was going to be really like pretty good this next couple seasons, I give him credit because a lot of guys would have just hung around and just kind of rode that wave, and he could have, he would have probably still had his spot and things like that. Like they weren't going to just, well, maybe Steinbrenner would have, but I give him credit, like him just being able to just kind of walk away like that. So I do give him props for that.
Yeah, he knew he was done, and I liked what it.
And left at a high level still. He had a good postseason. He was playing well. So I give him credit.
Yeah, I do too, and I liked what it showed that it was a combination for this team. That you saw that '94, people were like they were saying, hey, maybe they could have gone to the Fall Classic in '94.
And I forgot about that too. Like I forgot they were having a really, really good season.
Yeah,
Because we talk. I mean, I don't mean to jump in. I know you were on your point, but I immediately go to the Expos and when I think of '94, and I totally forget that the Yankees were playing really, really well.
no, I go to
My bad, go ahead.
no, it's okay. I go to both because we even did the Frank Thomas episode, and now just the fallout from the strike and those who have suffered still to this day from the '94 baseball strike, legacy wise, and even the game itself. So the Yankees are up there, and honestly, it's not the Yankees because what they did later on. I do think about two people. I think about Don Mattingly and Buck Showalter because I think if Buck gets there in 90, he has a 94 playoff run and 95. I don't think Steinbrenner tries to kind of muscle him about firing his coaches for 96.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. And they had a good chance in '94 to get to the World Series, and they knew that they were like 30 games over 500 when the
Yeah.
strike happened. So yeah, I totally forgot about that. And even that team, like it was just like a mix of like all these veteran players. You know what I mean? Yeah, Strawberry. Yeah, so many players on there, man. Like that it was just it like those teams. I as a fan drive me crazy because it's like not going to last forever. Like this is a bunch of veterans just playing really well together, and eventually this is going to die out. But luckily for them, they were drafting really well at that time, and they had a bunch of studs coming up too.
One thing I liked that this movie or that this docuseries showed in the first episode was for Jeter and for the other young guys, them talking about, hey, that playoff run in 95 and how everyone was committed to getting there, but to get Donnie Baseball, Don Mattingly there. But it was
Yeah.
cool to see, and they had the clips of it. Jeter's on the bench, but in the playoff series against Seattle, he's the first guy up, greeting
Yeah.
guys after a big hit after they scored, or, in game five when David Cohn gets yanked the first guy to agree with Derek Jeter. And as a young player, that's you don't see it all the time. But then he's what 20 or 21 at that time,
20. Yeah, it's maybe he might be 20. Yeah, because this is what that's year
95.
Yeah, that's year three.
So he might be like 20 years old.
Yeah,
So
20, 21.
to be up there, the first guy, like you see that he was hungry for it, but he was hungry to learn, and that's what that makes that core four of Jeter, Posada, Mariano Rivera, and Andy Pettitte was what made them great.
Yeah, yeah, and because he could have pouted, he could have been bitching, complaining, because he probably should have been on that roster. You know what I mean? Like, even if it's like a pinch hitter. I mean, even though they didn't, like you mentioned in the first episode, he had one at bat in September. He was behind Tony Fernandez, and you know he could have been complaining and been bitter about that situation and kind of pouting and stuff like that. Like we do see a lot of like great young players do, but he wasn't, man. He was all in. He bought into what they were doing, and and him doing that, him being, as you can see in the documentary, like him being that first person when they were coming out of the field meant a lot to these older veterans too.
Yeah, it's great to see, honestly. And I think that's what I feel. I hope I'm wrong. I think that's what's going to be the key. It's going to be these other guys getting interviewed, these teammates, or maybe a reporter. They're going to have to bring the real stories and really kind of hopefully bring up things and that kind of can put Jeter on the spot or just turn the narrative. Because you know what Jeter's going, he's always going to be that guy, type A perfectionist controlling the image.
Yeah,
And I think if the supporting cast can really step up and give these stories, that will really help the future episodes.
yeah, because I'm really interested on like what's coming next. Obviously, we know Joe Torre is going to probably be in episode two because at this point, like Showalter just kind of just stated, like he was done, like he wasn't going to fire four of his coaches, which I give him a lot of credit. You know what I mean, like for standing his ground, and because he was absolutely right. You fire all your coaches, but you come back, you do lose a little respect in that clubhouse, no matter what type of coach you are
I
or
think
who you
a
are.
lot of respect.
Right, especially to a veteran team like that. So I give him credit for that. But again, now we got Joe Torre coming in. We got a couple other free agents they signed, are going to be coming in that next season. So I'm interested to see
Well,
what's
I'll
coming up
say
with
this,
episode two.
and God rest his soul, and he was a colorful owner, and I don't like to pound on those who are no longer here. But to me, hearing it last night, and hearing you just say that, that's still like Steinbrenner knew he's coming back from heat, not liked. I mean, they cheered when they found out he was banned or away from the team.
Yeah.
Standing ovation at Yankee Stadium back in 1990. So when he comes back in 93, he knows he got to tread softly with the league and also with his image. So to me, this is that. He can't fire Showalter. So I'm going to fire your coaching staff. And to
Right.
me, what is Buck Showalter going to do? I mean, it's a great move that he did show loyalty. But honestly, what is he going to do?
Yeah.
And to me, that's George's conniving way of, I can't
Like
fire
letting
you.
him go.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
letting him go.
Yeah, and knowing that he was just going to be like, nah, I can't stand for this. So yeah, like that's a good point. And but again, I'm curious to see like what's going to come for this next episode. What do you think? Like they have, not that they have lined up, but what do you think? Like, because obviously now this is going to be Jeter's first full season with the
96.
Yankees. Yeah, '96. So we all know what happened there.
So I think you got to look at Joe Torre being hired. You'll
Right.
get into the story of Showalter getting fired, um, and Gene Michael going away. But what? Because that relationship that Torre and Jeter had, and Jeter calling him Mister Torre and all that stuff. I think you're going to have a lot of that. You're also going to have a lot of in my opinion, I don't know, but the development of the core four, their friendship. We know how tight. I think Jeter was Jorge Posada's best man
Yeah.
in his
Yeah.
wedding and stuff like that. So I think we're going to get a little bit, well, maybe a lot of like that friendship of those four guys really starting because they all. Well, I mean, Posada's like a backup in '96 to Girardi, but Pettit's
Yeah.
out there. Rivera's a setup guy. He's not the
Yeah.
closer,
Yeah. Wetland's the closer. Yeah.
and Jeter's out there. So three of the core
Yeah.
four are big
And
parts
Bernie
of it.
Williams is already playing. Yeah, Bernie
Yeah,
Williams was playing in '95 already. So
that's one thing I'll say. Some people say this because the core four of Jeter, Posada, Pettit, and Mariano Rivera. Some say it should be a core five.
five. Yeah, it should. It should because they all came up together. And again, like Bernie started playing a little earlier, but yeah, I look at it as five.
It's weird. I look at I guess because Bernie, yeah, he was playing run. Bernie to me has more stories with those bad years
Yeah,
than those other guys, so that's why sometimes I separate it. But I'm with you. I don't think it's wrong to call it a core five. Bernie was the guy even back then who I liked. The other guys I respect now, but couldn't stand him then. Bernie was the one guy I was a fan of then and now. I love Bernie Williams.
yeah, Bernie and Mariano Rivera. I don't know how you can not like. I'm not saying you, but like I
No,
don't know
I
how you
didn't. I
cannot like.
didn't. I didn't because you knew what happened when he was in there. So you just like
Yeah,
it frustrated you because if you didn't like the Yankees, which I didn't, I know you didn't either. So when you saw Mariano in the eighth or the ninth coming
it was
out,
over.
you knew it was over, and you're like, God, I hate when he comes out. That Metallica and the
Yeah,
Sandman's playing. It's like you gotta be kidding me.
yeah, it's a
So
wrap. It's over. Yeah, but I love Bernie Williams. I mean, he's Puerto Rican, so that's why I always had like a little extra love for Bernie Williams. But no, I again to your point, I always thought it was like I looked at it as them five who like were the dynasty. You know what I mean? Like, and they're the ones who were there from the jump.
so I guess to kind of wrap it up. So we can give let's do like a rating scale for each episode. So
Cool.
we'll do A, B, C, D.
Okay.
If you want to do a plus or a minus, you can go ahead, do that. But for episode one, what grade do you give it?
I'll give it a minus.
Okay.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I watched it twice. Like it's funny we did an episode. We did a 99 Pedro season, and then I know it was supposed to air at 10 o'clock, so I was like, it's over. You know what I mean? Like, and as soon as I turned the TV on, it had just started, so I was like, oh, cool, like I get to catch this. But yeah, I was into it. I was right from the jump. They had me hooked in there, and just from everything from what we talked about with his parents, what they went through a little bit. They were talking about that to what Jeter kind of went through, and then the struggles in the minor league. And the one thing that caught like made me laugh was like when he was standing on shortstop, and he was like, the first time in my career that I said to him, please don't hit the ball to me. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? Like, and if you ever play baseball and you experienced that, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and when he said that, it just brought back a lot of memories. But because I remember playing in the outfield and struggling, I'm like, please don't hit this ball to me, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and it's going to happen as soon as you do that. But no, I'll say A minus again. Like, I really enjoyed it, and I'm like you now. Now you got me all worried, man. Like about these next episodes, but
You gotta deliver.
yeah, no. But how about you, Demi?
I'm gonna give it a B plus.
Okay, we're close.
I thought it was really good. It's a really good setup episode for the series. The reason why I don't give it in the A is because I wanted more from Jeter. I felt like there was more. There was still script. I wanted to. It was still like it was scripted out. So it was scripted out. Like I don't know. I don't. I understand why, but I don't learn from whether it's a book or a podcast when you get the guy given the I'm just driven and I was going to
Yeah,
be number one. I was going to be number one. I don't relate to it. One
right.
thing I'll give the Jordan thing, you see the negative of it.
Yeah,
You always have like you see like he's that competitive and that drive, but you see the negative of it. Which let's be real, how many of those? I think Michael's got Charles Oakley as a friend. Like I think
yeah,
that's it. Like I think he has people who like to be around him, follow. But true friends, I think he's got Oakley and Ahmad.
yeah.
Those are Mike. So like you get like the effects. And Last Dance did show that if you didn't know before, like us, like it was he was lonely. So to me, give me that. I don't just want to hear. I number one, I was going for Johnny Damon. Number one, I was going to be there, and like
Which
he
I was surprised by that. Like, like it was cool to see that. Like Johnny Damon, like, oh shit, like he was good from the jump. Like,
Yeah, it was. I like the candidness because we know that you were hardworking. We know that you were great.
yeah, they all are.
Yeah,
You know what I
so
mean?
that's
Like,
where it's like that bores me. And
yeah,
also, not just like for like sensationalism, I don't learn from that. I like hearing the realness, the struggles that you were imperfect because I learn from it on things like, hey, I want to take in my life, and also things I don't want to do. When I see like an MJ and what he did, a lot of that is like that's not the kind of leader or teammate I want to be. I understand why he did it, but I don't want to be that. So to me, I want more of that from Jeter.
right. And I don't think we're getting that. I'll be very honest. Like, I don't see that happening. And because I think he's one of these guys that is very protective of the image, right? Like he went through a long ass career without having to deal with any of that type of drama, like all that stuff, right? I don't think he's going to come on this documentary and like not blow it up because I don't think he can blow it up because he's a god in New York, but
Teflon Don.
yeah, I don't think he can blow it up, but I think he can, you know, he can damage it a little bit, and I don't think he wants to do that, especially if he wants to get back to like, you know, like a front office somewhere in one of these teams. I've read that he wants to do, like, so I'm not holding my breath on that. My expectation is that he's going to be like that, like he's going to be like real tight to the vest. So I'm hoping, like you said, like his career, like a lot of his teammates are going to like
No.
pull more of the weight for him, So
Shots fired by Jose.
nah, he's a great player,
That's a
man. Like
shot.
it was a shot, but he's a great player, dude. But there's a couple shortstops in that era. I'm taking over Jeter for sure.
No, I agree, and I think one of them is going to be a big part of this
Yeah.
future, some of these future episodes. So I'm.
Who who I think is going to be candid.
You think
A Rod
so?
doesn't give a shit. Yeah, yeah, I think
A
so.
Rod's very rehearsed. I like A Rod, but he still is cornball too at times.
Oh, I hated him as a broadcaster, but
Uh,
um, I think he's going to be like okay airing stuff out, because because I felt like Jeter took a shot, not a he didn't take a shot at him, but it was like a subliminal shot when he talked about, I appreciate playing my whole career at shortstop. I was like,
I thought that too.
what do you mean by that? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's okay to change positions, but what do you mean by that? So we'll see. We'll see. That's going to be an interesting dynamic when to talk about that.
I think so. So I say, all right, ESPN, good job, good start, episode one. So and we'll always we'll promote the next one. So episode two will be July 21st, and we'll be coming out a day or two after with our reaction show for episode two. So we're going to do this on our YouTube channel
Yep.
throughout the 7 episode run. So please like, subscribe, tell your friends if you want to hear about reaction and what people think about this docu series about the captain.
The captain. Or if you want to give us your reaction, let us know. If you disagree with us, Yankees fans, that's fine. Like, y'all can let us know in the comments. We'll be more than happy to check them out.
That's right. So like and subscribe. Bigger than the game with Deremy and Jose. So for the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Jose Ruiz, I'm Deremy Dove. Thank you guys for watching us. Take care.
Peace.